can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
A source of truth for the MedTech industry.
Coexists with the province.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the MedTech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, built $1 billion company that held up high, a lot of things.
State of MedTech with your host, Omar and Khateeb. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. In this episode, I have my good friend Shawn McKenna, who's the VP of Sales and Marketing over at Noah Medical, a robotics company, come on the show to talk about a variety of different topics on selling, driving adoption, and leadership. It's a great episode. We cover a lot of different topics. For those of you who might be at a startup, I want to let you know that we at Khateeb & Co. help MedTech startups grow their commercial traction, grow their sales pipeline, and raise awareness with investors, specifically through content and social media. Early on, as a MedTech founder or leader, it's definitely very hard to get that traction and also to market yourself. We do all of this from A to Z for you. We've worked with a lot of different companies like Moon Surgical and others that are new disruptive technologies and helping them develop a foundation. And more importantly, how do they use social media to find and get early adopters? So if that sounds like you need some help, whether it's raising awareness with investors or getting commercial traction, growing your sales pipeline, we want to work with you. We work with companies from early stage all the way to fully commercial. So to learn more, shoot me a message at omar@khateebandco.com or just hit me up on LinkedIn. And finally, if you are a rep and you're listening to this episode, you're clearly interested in your own self-development. I've been a big proponent about learning how to sell digitally using social media, email, and all these other things. We see this being done in big tech and SaaS. We need to start doing this in our industry. The problem, though, your company has probably not invested anything in this. As I always tell all of my mentees and students, your personal and professional growth is your responsibility, not your company's. If you're not happy with the amount of money you're making, if you're not happy with the role that you're in, if you're not happy with your career, that's on you. To change things, start making an investment in yourself. As they say, the more you learn, the more you earn. An investment in yourself will never go wrong. My program, the Medical Sales Network Effects program, is the number one program to teach you how to use LinkedIn to not only brand yourself and, for great professional opportunities, but how to use LinkedIn, social media, and email to sell, to grow commercial pipeline, to do all of these things that are very important skills these days. Course at its peak a couple of years ago was about a $3,500 course. We were interviewing people for that. We were very closed off on it. Now I'd like to open it up, not only for more people to join the program, but also to be more affordable. So being a listener of this program, you can get access to the full course, which is learn as you go. You have full access to the materials, plus a private group with VP, CEOs, and other reps. It's a great place to network. You can get the course now for less than $1,000 at $998. Pretty great, especially if you got a tax return. Spend some of that money investing in yourself. So to take advantage of this offer, go to digitalmedicalsales.com, use the code podcast2024, and you'll get it for $998. And if for whatever reason you want to do it in payment plans, we have a payment plan options on there. We have great modules in the course, such as principles of psychology and persuasion, how to grow your network, how to engage surgeons on LinkedIn, advanced digital sales strategies, and so much more. So go ahead, go to www.digitalmedicalsales.com, take advantage of that offer. And if you're a sales leader that wants to purchase this for your team, you can use the same promo code, or if you want, shoot me a message and we can work something out so it's a little easier. Maybe I'll do a little bit of a personalized training for you guys. Now, let's get our episode with Shawn McKenna. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. And I'm joined by a good friend of mine, someone from, of course, the robotics world, but who has a breadth of experience that I'm really looking forward to diving into today. That's Shawn McKenna, who's the VP of Sales and Marketing over at Noah Medical. Shawn, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. You have this fantastic background as relates to disruptive technology and capital sales, more importantly, like very complex sales. And so I know today we're going to talk a little bit about challenges that the C-suite faces so that the reps and the leaders who are listening have a better chance of essentially driving technology adoption there. But for those who are just getting to know you, maybe you can give us a little bit of background on yourself, your background and experience, and we'll dive into the topic.
Yeah, thanks, Omar. Appreciate you having me on and excited to be here today. Sure, yeah. So I've got a little over 2 decades in the MedTech world, most of it working for companies introducing some form of disruptive technology. I started out actually with a company that sold cryoablation technology freezing kidney tumors and prostate tumors. It's how I met the folks at Intuitive Surgical. I was at a company called EndoCare for about 3 years. And then I spent the next 10 years of my career at Intuitive Surgical. When I joined, I remember I met him at a urology conference. It was the first World Robotics Symposium hosted by Vip Patel at Ohio State. So this was probably in 2003. And there were maybe 8 or 10 vendors there. And Intuitive was one of them. There were maybe 100, 150 people at the conference, which was a pretty big deal at the time. And I chatted with the folks who were running Intuitive Surgical. Ryan Rhodes was running marketing, and a guy named Christian Babini was one of their sales leaders. And I said, "How are you guys doing?" They said, "We're doing great. We've got about 12% of the prostate market, and we're looking to be at 25% by the end of the year." And at the time, man, their robotics was so conceptual and unproven that you could talk to 10 folks and it was hard to get 2 to even listen to you. Open surgery was the gold standard. Laparoscopy had been around for a while. And the concept of doing minimally invasive surgery for the masses was a dreamland for most folks. It was unattainable. And so here comes this company that decides that for prostatectomies, they're going to convert the whole industry from open to minimally invasive, right? That was the concept. And their mission statement was to take surgery beyond the limitations of the human hand. And I was incredibly compelled by that. I signed up, despite most of folks in my world telling me that it was crazy, that nobody was ever going to buy $1 million robot for prostates, and that the market was already saturated, and 4% laparoscopy and was about all that was going to be done. And when I joined, there was about 150 Da Vinci's standard systems in the United States, and they had done maybe 180, 200 million in revenue the year before. And I spent 10 years there. And by the time I left, it was 140 different procedures in 10 specialties with thousands of installs across the world and over 2 billion in annual revenue. So it was an amazing journey, learned a lot about launching new specialties, launching new products, and really hyper-acceleration growth in disruptive MedTech. I left in about 2016. And since then, I've been on the opposite end of the spectrum, working more in disruptive technology startup organizations. This is the second robotic organization I worked for. I worked for Globus Medical, launching a third to market spine robot, the Excelsius GPS. And I've spent the last little over 2 years working with Noah Medical, launching the third to market endoluminal robotics platform. In between those two, I worked at a company called Outset Medical, which launched an on-demand dialysis system that could be used in hospital, clinic, or home setting. The last two organizations have been real early series funding, pre-IPO organizations. Since I've left, I've gone earlier and earlier in the stage that I've joined organizations. It's a ton of fun. I love being in disruptive technology. I love being in MedTech startup world. So that's a little bit about me.
It's fantastic. No, and I can relate to that. From my first company onward, I think I started just going earlier and earlier stage, just because I feel like the problems just become more complex, and then your ability to have like larger impact, you just have a better chance of that. So let's talk about the topic for today. We exchanged emails about what we're going to talk about. And one of the topics you brought up were essentially the 3 biggest pain points that C-suite executives face today. And I think it's an important one because 10, 20 years ago, it used to be that you only needed a clinical champion and you can drive adoption. Now those are just table stakes. And so really deals live and die by the C-suite. So can you introduce the topic around what are those 3 pain points, and then we'll unpack each of those?
Yeah, sure. The benefit of being at the front end when I was with Intuitive in building out this division called National Accounts. And it was the first time, it was probably 2010, 2011. There was a trend occurring that had been occurring for some time, which was the consolidation of hospitals into major health systems. And along with that consolidation, whether it was for-profit or not for-profit, a trend in trying to own and employ more physicians. And we had seen it coming for a while. And we started to put together strategies around how do we show up better for health system executives, not just hospital executives, health system executives. What pain points are they trying to solve for? And there's a couple different organizations that I think do a good job of engaging health system executives. One is the ACHE, the American College of Health System Executives, and then the other one is Becker's Hospitals. Becker's was pretty new in 2011, 2012. They just started hosting a conference for executives. They've actually grown to be one of the largest, if not the largest, health system executive summit annually. I just presented there at their conference this year. I presented their conference multiple years, and it's gotten bigger and bigger. And the topics have shifted from consolidating care under the umbrella of these major health systems into really three key areas that have become pretty consistent over the last 3 or 4 years. One is access. So hospitals need more access points for patients. Those can be virtual access points to engage patients in what types of care they provide, or in-person access points. So bricks and mortar is expensive. It's especially expensive to bring people into the four walls of hospitals. That's where your highest cost center is. And so improving access points either through clinics, ambulatory surgery centers, virtual spaces for physicians to engage with patients is a major trend. The second is capacity. Health systems are looking to integrate new technology and forge partnerships that can improve throughput and capacity. In the lung cancer space, which is the space that I'm in as an example, even if you do a better job of identifying patients upstream that need to be biopsied for lung cancer, in a lot of facilities, there's a 6 to 8 week waiting period just to get the patients in and biopsied. And then there's an additional 3 to 4 month waiting period to get them into some sort of a treatment pathway. In a disease state where every 90 days there's a stage shift, lung cancer is a fast growing cancer. Health system executives are looking to figure out, okay, even if I can get the patients and I can improve access points to know that I can capture them, how do I get them through the care pathway in an efficient way so that I can provide them a premium outcome? That's the capacity concern. And then the third one that they're thinking about is, if I do those two things well, how do I get a workforce to be able to support and provide the services that are required to adequately and efficiently care for those patients? And so there, especially since COVID, there's been a massive shortage in workforce in the health system space. Burnout has increased. And so how do you develop either integrated solutions that leverage artificial intelligence, as an example, and or workforce pipelines, talent recruitment pipelines that can ensure that you're going to have the staff to adequately service those patient populations? Layer on top of that, there are growing areas of specialty where there's not enough fellows coming out every year to service them. So the competition for physician talent is increasing as well. So those are the three big things that we're hearing about most often: improving access, improving capacity, and how do I solve for the workforce problems that I have.
Of those three, when you think about, let's say, capital equipment, which one do you feel like is the most common one that companies sort of trip over and they're not able to close a deal?
It starts with intelligent design, right? The company that I work for right now, we create a product that helps physicians biopsy early stage lung cancer. And in our mission statement, what we say is that we want to create adoptable clinical solutions. And how we define adoptable is that it has to provide improved clinical outcomes for patients. It has to provide improved operational efficiency for health systems, and it has to provide improved financial outcomes. And so when you think about how vendors can show up, how capital equipment companies can show up for health systems, it starts with that. Am I designing a product that is going to have a significant impact on improving patient care? If it's a Me Too product, that's pretty tough. If it significantly improves patient care, then you got a fighting chance, right? So am I going to significantly improve patient care over what's currently available? Number two, and this is becoming more and more important, is how disruptive is it going to be to the infrastructure that the health system already has in place? Is it going to be disruptive from a cybersecurity integration standpoint? Is it going to be disruptive from a operative workflow standpoint? Is it going to require a significant amount more resources or people to run? And so a couple of the design choices we've made is we're the only system on the market that has disposable scopes. And I'm going to talk about our product, not very much, but I'm talking about it here because it's relevant. Why did we make that decision? We made that decision because we know that sterilization reprocessing is a massive cost for health systems. So talk to any health system executive. Where do you hate spending money? Sterilization or reprocessing? Maybe that and parking. It's like fixing the roof on your house. You have to do it, but you don't like spending money on it, or replacing the windows. Especially when you take into account that of the hundreds of millions of dollars that are spent on sterilization reprocessing every year, 60% of that equipment actually never gets used in a procedure. So you're cleaning and re-cleaning things that aren't getting used. Significant cost, significant labor force, hard to scale. By creating a solution that has disposable scope technology, you're eliminating the need to take up any people resources associated with sterilization reprocessing. So that's one. Cybersecurity has become a massive issue. So a lot of folks want to have data integrated products where you can do over-the-air updates, software updates. You make things more efficient for you as a vendor without really taking into account all of the rules, regulations, and issues that could cause for a health system. And so that's another one. If you're going to have a data integrated product, how much are you considering the impact that it's going to have on the other end to the customer, and are you really prepared for that? More sophisticated organizations are. If you're working in the startup world, that can be really expensive. And so are you really prepared to be fully integrated from a data perspective out of the gates? Or can you get along for the first 3 to 5 years without being integrated, reduce the burden on the health system adopting your solution, and work on that as a phase 2 project? So those are just a couple things to consider. And then finally, health system executives want a chance to validate your technology before they make a full investment. So are you prepared to come to market with a try before you buy concept, prove your value proposition with data before you ask for full commitment from the health system? So those are 3 things.
Yeah, and something I want to go back to and just get your take on it. For the longest time, I think after the boom of the 2000s, where we saw the razor blade model really take off, a lot of hospitals got turned off from this concept of having to spend money over time for disposables. And so there's a push and demand for more reusable products. But now what you're saying is that the market has changed and they're going back to asking for disposable units just because the cost of SPD is increasing. Is that correct? Like, why do you think that happened? Because it is a surprise for me.
Yeah, I think I think it's probably technology and specialty specific. I think if you're talking, and it's also cost specific. So again, if for it to be adoptable, it has to improve clinical, operational, and economic outcomes. So if you give me something that's disposable, but it costs 7 times as much, and now I'm getting a negative margin on my procedure rather than a positive margin, I'm probably less inclined to adopt something like that. But if you can give me something that's disposable, that eliminates my need for sterilization reprocessing, has as high quality or higher quality outcomes for my patients, and improves my margins, that's a win all around. I think that the thing that's popping up now is, what's the impact on the environment? And is it an environmentally friendly solution as well? And if you can tick that box as well, it's an improvement on environmental outcomes, improvement on financial outcomes, improvement on clinical outcomes, improvement on operational outcomes. I think that's what folks are looking for. I think the trend to reusing equipment was cost driven, right? If I'm using a product once and it cost me $2,000, could I use that product twice by sterilizing it and using it again? And so that is the market telling us, we need you to help us with the margins, right? There's multiple, think about the life of a health system executive. You have to purchase these products. You have to keep your physicians armed and able to treat patients, whatever community you serve. And then you have to rely on multiple third parties to reimburse you for the services that you provide. In a lot of cases, you don't employ every physician that provides care for your patients. So you're having to juggle all these balls, keep all these folks happy. So if we can show up as vendors and having thought through some of these solutions already, right? The payers are looking for this. The physicians are looking for this. You're looking for this. This is how we can impact and provide you with the ability to not only provide better care, but maybe improve the rates that you're getting from providers. Maybe we can go at risk with you with providers and tag team on providing better care and put our money where our mouth is as vendors. I think that's what health system executives are asking us to do. Show up better. Don't just show up with a product, right? Show up with a solution. Show me that you're thinking about all of the issues that I'm dealing with, from access perspective, capacity, and workforce. And if you do that and you're helping me solve those problems and you're providing improved clinical outcomes, improved operational efficiency, and improved financial performance, I'm probably more likely to do business with you. So I think it's actually evolving outside of just capital and disposables and moving into more of a, what solution are you providing me? So we live in this world where you have everything is coming as a service, right? Software as a service. One of our competitors is using now robotics as a service. Come to me with solutions and services. If you have products that help to solve for those things, that's great. Incorporate those into your solutions and services, but don't make me do all the work on the back end to figure out how to make it work. Come to me with the turnkey solution and let me pay to implement it on an ongoing basis and then measure the outcomes and show me that it's working.
Do you feel like that's something that most companies are not doing a good job? Maybe not even most companies. It's just that, like, what I feel that a lot of reps seem to miss is not coming with the economic vehicle that is going to make sense for the hospitals to adopt it. And they rely too much on the clinical champion to just champion how valuable the clinical side is versus the economic story, which is really what decides whether these things get adopted or not.
Yeah, look, if in the startup, the more sophisticated organizations are coming to the table with more comprehensive solutions, right? So I would still say that they're probably not, there's great companies out there that are working with employees and employers and health systems to navigate patient care pathways. Chart is one of those. Sedgwick is one of those. So these are not, they're not insurers. They're not physicians. They're not patients. They're not device companies. They're third-party intermediaries that are helping the end customer, for all of us, who is the patient, helping the patient figure out, how do I navigate this complex web of decisions that I have to make to get the care that I need for me or my family? So I think that as a startup, it's very hard to come to the table with comprehensive solutions. I think that if you're a more established organization, they have divisions that are thinking about this. So there's divisions popping up that are thinking about, how do we integrate artificial intelligence? How do we integrate data as a product? How do we show up with a full ecosystem solution for health systems? And they're starting to pivot away from this razor blade concept that I think really, gained a lot of traction in the 90s, 2000s, more towards this following the software model, which is, how do we provide our MedTech solutions as a service? I think you're going to continue to see that trajectory really accelerate in the years to come. And I think the folks that do it really well are going to continue to win the business of the health system executives, because they're helping them to solve problems that go well beyond the specific clinical need that their individual product addresses.
No, I completely agree. And I think, like, one of the barriers to adoption has always been, what are the upfront costs and economics of adopting? And I think that the more creative, an example of this would be Moon Surgical, who's a surgical robotics company. Their product, the way it's positioned, while it hasn't some innovative specs on it as a technology, they actually have a very interesting business model built around it to make it easier for certain types of hospitals to adopt it. And I feel like that's going to be the most important thing for a lot of MedTech companies moving forward. Do you feel like do you feel like there's something in the bigger scheme of the market that's driving this? I'm wondering if maybe as consumers, both as business consumers and regular consumers, we're used to this business model in other parts of our lives. And I'm wondering if that's what's influencing on the B2B side for hospital execs to expect this as well.
Yeah, I think there's a massive trend in how, I think you're right. Companies who show up better for health system executives dramatically reduce the barrier to entry to try out their solution, put their money where their mouth is, and then have data to show them that their solution is more effective when it comes to delivering clinical, operational, and economic value, that's going to become the norm. The market's demanding it. You talk to any executive, most health systems now won't even consider looking at new companies and new products without a 6 to 12 month period to try before they buy, because they've been burned too many times. They have rooms and rooms full of products where there was a big promise and the physician had to have it, and gosh darn it, if we don't, we're gonna miss out, and then it doesn't work out for one reason or another. And so I think that's going to start to become more the norm for sure. What's driving it? I think healthcare is moving towards a patient consumer based market, right? So increasingly, patients have more and more information about how they choose their providers. Increasingly, patients have more and more information about how to get the best results for them and their loved ones. And if you look at all of the integration, like in the primary care space, with having all of the access to my healthcare information on my phone through apps like MyChart, that's all in its infancy right now. The market over the next 10 years is going to rapidly shift towards a consumer-based healthcare market where I'm going to have a menu on my phone. And there's plenty of, this isn't pie in the sky, me pulling this out of the top of my head. There's plenty of analytics that go in from McKinsey, BCG, that show this, that you could reference, that show that there is a shift towards how patients are going to make decisions, their ability to access more healthcare in their home, either through virtual meetings with physicians or in-home tests that would typically be done in primary care. If you take a look at sleep apnea as an example, sleep apnea 10 years ago, you had to go to a sleep center. You had to spend an entire week there. You had to be monitored. And now they can send something to your house and you wear it on your finger for 3 nights and they diagnose you and you get your prescription. I think there's a rapid trend where the patients are pushing it. And at the end of the day, that's the customer that all of us serve, right? The physicians, the health system executives, the insurance providers, the employers, and device and pharma companies all serve one customer. And at the end of the day, it's the patient. As we move more towards a patient-focused consumer marketplace where you have the Amazon, there will be an Amazon of healthcare, where you have a menu of services and specialties that you're trying to access, and the patient will be able to click, figure out which provider is aligned with their insurance, figure out what kind of benefits they get, and make decisions in real time. I think we're all preparing to respond to that.
Yeah, I want to go to something real quick because, again, we both connected over our love for early stage companies. When you're an early stage company, you don't have data, you don't have case studies, success stories. And so I'm wondering, like, how do you go about finding the right hospital and early adopter to trial your technology and develop that economic and clinical case study? Like, how in your mind, what are the kind of things that you look for? Because a lot of times I feel that companies and reps, their bias is always, oh, let's go to the Mayo Clinics of the world or Cleveland Clinic or Hopkins because it's a big name. And oftentimes those aren't the right place to do those kind of things at. So I'm wondering for you, when it comes to finding an early adopter hospital and clinician to help you create that economic story and clinical story with the data, what do you look for?
Yeah. So you're looking for the prophets and the innovators. So one thing that I don't think has changed, and I don't know will change anytime soon, is the evolution that we go through when we're introducing new technologies into any space, right? So you got prophets, innovators, early adopters, early majority, and most things die before they ever get to early majority. Most things never get past the prophet innovator stage. So in the early phases, you're looking to profile 2 key people in your first limited market release sites, let's call it in your first 20 to 50 sites in the country. And the profile is this: they thrive and are completely committed to innovation and being at the tip of the spear. You need an executive decision maker and a clinical decision maker that have both decided that's a strategic priority for them and their hospital and their practice. And so that's an interview process. They're not easy to spot, but they're hard to find. And in your pre-market prep, you have to spend a lot of time interviewing, profiling, and identifying who are my 10 to 20 prophets and innovators. I have executive and clinical alignment that this may or may not work, but you're going to be my partners in creating the first set of data to prove whether or not it does, right? And then quickly, you have to be able to quickly be able to pivot to broaden your innovator base, right? So then there's the phase 2 innovators that have just all they need is a little bit of data. They don't want to be one of the first 10 to 20, but they want to be one of the first 100, right? And then you secure your first 100 innovators. Once you have your first 100 innovators, if you've done your job, you should have all sorts of data. Clinical publications take a little more time, but white paper data, case study data, at least to start to inform your early majority, who's going to be a little more pragmatic and a little more data-driven. And in today's day and age, it's so much easier to compile the data and analyze it and then pump out relevant stats on improved clinical value, improved financial value, and improved operational value, that if you do your job well, in the first 12 to 18 months, you should have enough to start to at least go to phase 2 innovator status. In the first 36 months, you should have enough to start to go to the early adopter status. That hasn't changed. I don't think that will change, but that's how we've done it for, this is the 7th company in a row. It's working so far.
No, I completely agree with that. The one advantage that you and I have today that didn't really exist 10 years ago is the ability to use things like social media to essentially scale the ability to find these people. How does social media play like a role for you and your sales team in terms of finding those adopters? Because I'm sure if you think back to Intuitive or Globus, some of the best clinical adopters weren't the ones who are on podium. They're like an unknown name, but they got activated through the technology and became KOLs. So I was wondering if, social media plays a role in that process for you, and if so, how?
There's a great book that I read when I was getting started out called Never Eat Alone. And there's another great book that Malcolm Gladwell wrote called The Tipping Point. And both point to the importance of one thing, and that's establishing a really powerful network. In the book Never Eat Alone basically said that it was really pre-social media integration, but it was about whenever you go someplace, you never miss a chance to connect. So make as many connections as you can while you are someplace. Make sure that you give them a phone number, email, et cetera. You start a correspondence. Malcolm Gladwell talks in his books about a key person to driving something over a tipping point is a super connector, right? And a super connector is somebody who has a broad network. Most people have 6 or 7 degrees of separation. They have 2 to 3 degrees of separation. What social media has done is it's leveled the playing field for everybody. So if you're savvy with developing a social media presence, you should be able to hyper accelerate your network. If you're savvy at running digital marketing campaigns, you should be able to hyper accelerate a qualified funnel of people who are interested in and fit the profile that you're looking for at whatever phase of adoption you're in. So for me, I think, and this was referenced in BCG did an article about this maybe 2 or 3 years ago. If you're a startup that wants to compete with the big folks, if you do not have a social media and digital marketing campaign plan out of the gates to ensure that the one thing that the big companies have that the small ones don't is people. So our competitors have thousands and thousands of employees across the globe. So as a company, as a sales and marketing person who's trying to compete with that, running a sales and marketing force of 100 people, how do I do that? The time that they spend has to be spent with folks who are actually interested in what we have to offer. And in the old days, that was knocking on doors and it was going through the yellow pages and it was having a bunch of discovery meetings. And that just doesn't work anymore. If you don't have a savvy social media campaign strategy, and if you don't have a savvy digital marketing and targeting strategy, you're going to get left in the dust because the big companies are using it. And now, if I can get my team of 70 in front of qualified leads who have already responded to our value proposition, who fit the profile of prophet, innovator, early adopter, whatever phase we're in, and I can show that they've responded to multiple postings about whatever's of interest to them, right? Clinical outcomes, financial outcomes, operational outcomes. Now, not only is that good for the folks that I'm calling on, because I know what they want to talk about, but it's good for us, right? We can go and fish where the fish are. So I don't see how you survive as a startup moving forward if you don't have some sort of really solid social media and digital marketing strategy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think our industry is like very slowly changing about this. There's so much noise. There's so much competition out there for attention, and not just within our industry. I'm sure you've heard this saying, Shawn, where when you're selling into the hospital, you're not just selling against like your direct competitor. You're selling against everybody, right? Everybody's competing for those dollars. I feel like it's the same thing with attention, right? There's only so much attention you have every day. So like when we put out our content, we're not just competing with like other MedTech companies. You're competing with everything. And so I think it's more important than ever to be savvier on that side. And the one thing that I think a lot of MedTech companies, a lot of B2B companies don't factor in is the cost of creative, because they factor in a lot of other things, but they don't factor in the cost of creative, of creating good content, engagement, how do you drive that, et cetera. And so I'm hoping to see like more changes there. As we round out the interview, Shawn, I appreciate you like spending some time with us and everything. Like what's your best advice? We have a lot of young reps who listen and they're always looking to spend time with somebody like you and just get some like tips on how do they become like great reps that can catapult their careers into becoming great leaders. What were some things that helped you earlier in your career? And maybe If you feel like shouting out any mentors that taught you these lessons, feel free to.
Oh man, I got a lot of mentors that taught me these lessons. Early days, I was trained by Jerry McNamara Sr., Chris Sells, Christian Babini, Jim Alex, I'm missing up, Gene Nagel. These were guys who had already cut their teeth at other organizations, who had already established themselves in the industry. I was a 26-year-old kid trying to figure out how to sell to executives. They taught me a lot. I would say that they taught me about equal business stature. They taught me about the importance of understanding your data and being prepared to engage in thoughtful discussions about it. They taught me the importance of being able to think quickly on your feet. They taught me the importance of learning from the best, right? You don't no need to try to recreate the wheel. There's somebody out there who's already doing it pretty well. If you can learn from the best and replicate what they're doing. But I think I've taken the lessons that I learned there. I've also taken the lessons learned from since I left Intuitive Surgical, doing startups at 4 or 5 different spots. And we have a mantra at NOAA that we use for our customer-facing organization, which I consider to be sales, training, education, marketing, and service. And it's 4 key things. I think that if you're excellent at these 3 things, you got a shot. Number 1 is listen. Number 2 is tell the truth. Number 3 is earn the right to be in the room. And number 4 is execute with excellence. So listening. Most sales folks make the mistake of walking into the room already knowing what they're going to say. And some of this is trained too, right? You got your pitch deck, you got your talk track, you got your scripts. You've been through these things. You know what you can say and what you can't say. But the really elite folks are the ones that go into the room knowing what they want to ask. So what you want to ask is more important than what you want to say. If you know what you want to ask, you know the conversation that you want to have, to figure out whether or not that customer might have any interest in hearing what you have to say, then you're putting yourself in a pretty good position. Skill set number 1, learn how to execute on excellent discovery, whether it's a clinical decision maker or an executive decision maker. That requires preparation. It requires an understanding of their space. It requires understanding what's most likely important to them. And then you can be prepared on what you want to say. Number 2 is tell the truth. So the number of meetings that I've walked out of saying, based on the conversation we've had today, I'm not really sure we have anything to offer you, far outweighs the number of meetings that I've walked out saying, I think we've got something for you. And the trust that you develop with either an executive or a clinical decision maker as a salesperson by saying, based on what I know, we don't have a solution for you, is significant. And the number of times that they will sit you down and won't let you leave the room and say, hold on a second. I didn't say I'm not interested. We're just not talking about the right thing yet. Okay, great. Tell me what we should be talking about. What have I not talked about that's of interest to you? So tell the truth. Tell the truth about whether or not you can provide them with value. Tell the truth about what your product does. Tell the truth when you screw up. Tell the truth when you don't know, right? Because at the end of the day, a transaction is all about trust. And if you don't have trust with the customer, they're never going to have a transaction with you. So listen, tell the truth. Earn the right to be in the room. Whether you're talking to a clinical decision maker, an administrative decision maker, an executive decision maker, you have to be able to provide them with value and help them solve a problem that they haven't solved yet. If it's a clinical decision maker, it's improving outcomes for their patients. It's making it a more efficient workflow. It's making their staff more happy. If it's an executive decision maker, how do you help me solve my access problem, my capacity problem, my workforce problem? How do you help me improve my margins? How do you help me better service the community that I'm trying to service? And in order to earn the right, you got to be prepared, man. You got to know their business better than they know it. So that goes back to discovery, right? Having a thorough understanding of the problems that they're facing and how your solution fits into it is earning the right to be in the room. If you show up with a feature advantage benefits pitch to a high volume physician or a savvy executive, they're going to listen to you for 5 minutes and they're going to shut off. They're too busy. They got a bunch of problems to solve. If you earn the right to be in the room and you provide them with a well thought out solution based on your discovery and understanding of their problems that is going to solve a significant issue for them, then you've earned the right, man. And they'll give you more time and they may even give you the business. So that's number 3, earn the right. Number 4, once they've signed the contract with you, once they've given you the opportunity to implement your solution, execute with excellence. Deliver on everything you said you were going to and make sure that you track it with data and consistent follow-up and communication so that you can prove it. And that last part, even if you do the first 3 parts right, we have an executive advisory board, and one of them said, I get 10 times the number of requests that I can fund every year. The whole listening, telling the truth, and earning the right, that helps me whittle it down from 10 times the request to what I can fund. The last one, execute with excellence. Those are the companies that I do business with long term. And as hard as it is to get into the top 10% to get funded, it's equally as hard to get into the top 10% that I decide that I'm going to do business with on a long-term basis. Because executing and support after the sale, even after you've done all that hard work to get it, is usually something that companies fail at. So if you can do those 4 things, listen, tell the truth, earn the right, and execute with excellence, you have the chance, I think, to be in the top 1% to 2% of people that either those executives or clinicians are going to meet with.
That's fantastic. And I love that you have a framework for that, because I think very much like ethics and a lot of things in life, you have to have your own list of values that you always go to, because when times get tough, those are the things that really hold you together and make you decide like what you will and will not do. So I love that you put that together. Shawn, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm sure we're going to have you back on. But in the meantime, I know that a lot of our audience is going to want to follow you. Don't think you have a TikTok, but where can people find you on social media?
I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah, I do not have a TikTok. I'm on LinkedIn for professional, Instagram for personal.
Fantastic. Awesome. Shawn, thank you so much for joining us. It's been another episode of The State of MedTech. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We come out with a lot of episodes. We don't want you to miss them. And as always, if you've been a listener of this show, we are the #1 podcast in the industry for a reason, because of you, the listener. Give us that 5-star review, write a short thing to say on Apple if you're listening there, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who'd really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.